For every choice we make, there's a consequence. The choices John made when he was younger seem to be affecting his life in the present, and he has to go back to his parents' house when he loses everything he has. Will he be able to have a new start, or will he forever be haunted by the consequences of past decisions? In the opening scene of Fall City, a fast asleep John is woken up by his mother, who tells him that Santa is at their house as the rain softly patters on the roof. She gently guides him and his brother down the stairs quietly. The kids are surprised to see Santa at work, placing the gifts under the Christmas tree. His mom whispers his name, and suddenly John wakes up. It was all a dream, and John is much older, living alone in an almost empty apartment. He gets dressed and leaves, locking the door. It's still dark outside. He drives to a location and parks by the roadside. John gets out of the car with the bag and breaks into a car, stealing whatever is valuable to him. He moves to another car, but cuts his hand when he tries to break into it. As John moves along the street, he sees a happy family through their home window, and his countenance changes. He's sad, and there's longing in his eyes. Just then, the sirens of a police car are heard, and he runs away. He manages to escape, losing the bag in the process, and heads to his car, but sees two guys breaking the windows and setting the car on fire. He helplessly watches as his car goes up in flames, and fights the urge to cry. John gets back to his apartment and sees all his things in front of the house, a notice of eviction glued to the door. How is it that things just keep getting bad for him this season? Just then, his neighbor arrives. She notices the bags on the floor, looks at him, and walks into her apartment. In the next scene, John boards a bus that takes him to Fall City. He's dropped off on a street in the middle of the night, rain pouring down as he walks to his mom's home. He lets himself into the house and takes a moment to look at his brother and his childhood photos. His mom comes downstairs and hugs her son, who she's not seen for a long time. John asks about his brother, Alex, and his mom informs him that he's deployed and won't be coming home for 6 months. Just then, John's dad walks in. He asks where John's car is, to which John replies by lying that it's at the shop. His father has prepared a job for him without his consent, and John is against it, but doesn't have a choice when his father asks him to pay rent after Christmas. The next day, John sits down at the table to have his breakfast of cereal, and sees 2 small packages, along with a note from his mother asking him to mail them. In the next scene, John is taking the packages to be mailed. He sees a truck and looks through the window. Just then, a woman named Olivia asks him if he locked his keys in the car, and he lies that he did. She brings 2 wires, offering to help him unlock it. She picks the lock while John looks around. She successfully opens it and gives him the wires. As soon as she leaves, John hops into the car and puts his hands on the steering wheel. A few moments later he jumps out of the car, forgetting the packages inside it. On his way back, John stares at a fancy car as it approaches the parking spot. He scoffs and rolls his eyes as soon as he sees the owner. It's someone he's familiar with. He runs to get inside the shop, but finds it locked. Just then, the guy from earlier comes up behind him, and soon recognizes John. The guy savages John for not being able to read, and has a look of condescension on his face. He leaves soon enough. In the next scene, John goes to the post office where he'll be working. He informs Eugene that he'll be leaving Fall City a few weeks after Christmas, and he's hired as a seasonal worker. Derek, the guy John met earlier, also works there, and is asked to get John started. Their countenance reveals that they dislike each other. Derek leads John away and gives him a cleaning bucket to clean the storage room, saying that John was given the job out of pity, and not because there's an opening. John doesn't respond. On seeing the mess, he gets annoyed and sits on a chair he found in the sea of boxes. In the next scene, John gets home very annoyed. He sees a note from his mother thanking him for helping with the packages, along with some money. He immediately remembers the packages and runs back to where the truck is waiting. Olivia sees him through her shop glass and tells him that they're closed for the day, not knowing he isn't there to patronize her business. The truck is still there, and John sees that the packages are also intact. He opens the door and gets the packages. Just then, the owner of the truck drags him out and kicks him several times, taking the cash in John's wallet before driving off. Olivia runs out of her shop to help John. She takes him into the shop and wants to call the police, but he stops her. He tries to leave, but she stops him and helps him clean his face. Olivia still believes that he's the owner of the truck, and that it was stolen from him. She opens up to him to try to cheer him up when he tells her that the year has been bad. She has a daughter and is going through a divorce. She looks at the time and realizes that she has to get back home, since her daughter is with a sitter. Outside, Olivia's car doesn't start, and John ends up having to push it to get it started. As a way of showing gratitude, she offers John a free haircut the next day, and he gladly accepts it. She wishes him good luck before driving off. The next day at work, John diligently arranges the storage room and cleans it, making it look as neat as possible. He looks at the clock on the wall and sees that it's almost time for his appointment with Olivia. John comes out of the room and informs Derek that he's going home, but he's told to clean the lobby. He protests, but he doesn't stand a chance against Derek. After work, John runs to Olivia's shop, but it's already closed. He gets a call from Alex just as he starts heading home. They talk for a few minutes before Alex runs out of minutes. He makes a comment to Alex about how Santa lost his life in action before the call ends. A little girl overhears this and questions him. John is shocked at first, but tells her that Santa isn't real and that her parents lied to her. The little girl starts crying, and her mother runs outside and overhears John. The girl's mother turns out to be Olivia, who loses her temper at him for ruining her daughter's Christmas when she tried her best to make it perfect. John is feeling apologetic now, but she carries her child and walks out on him. She gets into her car and tries to start it, but it doesn't work. John tries to help, but she rejects him. She tries again, and the car starts this time. She zooms off, leaving John, who regrets his actions. The next day, John helps the pastor at the church to load boxes into a truck. The pastor asks how his life has been, and John tells him that everything has been tough, and also about the incident with Olivia's daughter. The pastor tells John about how he forgot his wife's birthday twice, and how he handled it, as a way of advising him. In the next scene, John walks into Olivia's salon, Fall City's cut, with a box in his hand. He puts it down just before Olivia walks out of the room to welcome her customer. She doesn't welcome him and instead asks what he wants. He asks for a haircut, and she reluctantly agrees. She's still upset with him, and aggressively cuts his hair. John doesn't complain and asks about her daughter, Adil, which results in Olivia telling him the effects of his words on her daughter. John starts telling her about when he found out that Christmas wasn't real. It was when he was Adil's age, and his grandpa lost his life. His father decided to tell him, since their grandfather, who always dressed up as Santa, was gone. On hearing this, Olivia starts to feel pity for him, but cuts him short by informing him that she's done. His hair looks like a disaster, but he doesn't complain and just apologizes before leaving. Olivia follows after him, but hits the box John brought earlier, and opens it. She sees a new car battery that John got for her. In the next scene, John is at a riverbank, standing in the rain while remembering the day his childhood fantasy of Santa Claus was ruined. He walks back home and goes to work. He remembers how he cried, and in that moment, John also remembers how he made Adil cry. On getting back home, John's mother welcomes him home and notices his countenance. She asks if he wants to talk about it, but he insists that he's fine. He looks through a box on the chair and sees a letter he received from Santa when he was younger. The handwriting on the letter and in the envelope were different. In the next scene, John asks Eugene if he knows where the letter came from, and Eugene tells him that every year, local volunteers take care of the letters to Santa and reply. John's grandfather and father were part of the volunteers. John is curious to find out who replies to the letters to Santa now, and Eugene takes him to see the unreplied letters from the kids, saying that they've not been able to find volunteers for a long time. Next scene, John visits the supermarket and sees Olivia. He tries to hide, but runs into a shelf. He almost runs into Adil, who keeps smiling at him. He apologizes to her about what he said to her. Just then, Olivia walks up to them, and John explains that he didn't approach Adil in a panic. But he soon realizes that Olivia isn't upset, and she apologizes for the way she cut his hair, promising to fix it for him. They're about to leave when Adil asks if John could join them to make cookies, since he has marshmallows. Olivia hesitates, but later agrees. Later, Olivia, John, and Adil decorate cookies, and John plays with the little girl. A few minutes later, it's Adil's bedtime and Olivia takes her to the bedroom. While Olivia puts Adil to bed, John cleans the place. She comes out and sees him washing the dishes, appreciating and helping him. During the haircut, Olivia and John talk more. Afterward, she escorts him outside, and he thanks her for inviting him. She's also thankful to him for making Adil laugh, and he suggests that he visits again. But Olivia tells him that she's not interested in starting a relationship anytime soon. John understands, and decides to be just her friend. He asks her to tell Adil to write to Santa before leaving. In the next scene, John goes to the post office and goes through the box of unreplied letters, writing replies to each one. He tells Eugene that he wants to do something other than cleaning, but Eugene finds no sense in training him, since he's leaving in a few weeks. John informs him that he'll stay for a bit longer, and Eugene is glad. Derek is asked to show John the auto-sort system, and give him a key to the building. Over the next few weeks, John and Olivia get close, and John feels a sense of fulfillment as he replies to the letters of kids who write to Santa. In the next scene, John and Olivia are watching a movie in Olivia's living room, while Adil is fast asleep on her lap. She takes Adil to bed, and gets back to see John, who's in front of the record player that once belonged to her mother. She picks out a disc and plays it. He goes through her disc collections, and doesn't see what he's looking for. Olivia tells him that the disc was not for Christmas, and he jokes that they can't be friends anymore. She instead plays another one that she feels he'll like. The two adults lie down on the floor, and John tells her about the summers he spent with his brother. He asks her about herself, and she tells him why she's divorcing her husband, and how things have been hard for her and her daughter. Just then, Adil comes in clutching her teddy bear, having had a nightmare. Adil asks her mom to read her a bedtime story, but Olivia offers to get her water instead. John follows Adele to her room and agrees to read her a bedtime story. Olivia watches as he reads the story without interrupting them, until Adele asks if John is spending the night at the house. Olivia replies to her daughter that he can't, and John gets up to leave while Olivia puts the child back to sleep. Instead of leaving immediately, he watches her as she sings to Adele. He leaves after a few moments. On his way out, he sees that she has some bills to pay. In the next scene, John arrives at work early to reply to the kids' letters. Eugene is surprised to see him there, and gives him a new stack of letters. John asks Eugene about the vacant assistant position, and Eugene informs him that Derek is after the position too. He adds that he's looking for a strong character, more than experience. Eugene encourages John to keep up the good work and he'll be considered for the position. When Eugene leaves, John goes through the stacks of letters and sees one from Adele. She thanks Santa and asks for an original Care Bear, which is called Wish Bear. John does his research on getting home. The next day, John asks his mom for her car to run an errand, and she agrees. He appreciates her and hurries off. His parents look at each other, amazed at their son's changed behavior. In the next scene, John travels a long way to get the Care Bear and gets back in time. On his way to Olivia's house, he sees her coming out of a building. She's upset at a guy who turns out to be Derek. She had mentioned going to a family counselor with her soon-to-be ex-husband, who turns out to be Derek. None of them notice him, and Olivia storms off. Later on, John arrives at Olivia's house with the gift. He sees her getting groceries from her trunk, and offers to help her, but she tells him that she wants to be alone. He offers to take Adele for a bit, but she wants to be alone with her daughter. She gets angry with him when he constantly tries to help her, leaving him surprised. The next day, John goes to work and hears that Derek was promoted to assistant postmaster while Eugene went to Oregon for a family emergency. The news comes as a surprise to him, and he leaves for his office, but finds it locked. Derek shows up and calls him aside. He tells John that he's fired, because he's been to jail before, but John argues that he doesn't have the power to do that. They received letters from the Department of Corrections. He tries to call Eugene, but Derek says that it's already been concluded with him. John feels hopeless at that moment and leaves, but stalls when he sees Olivia coming to drop a letter. She passes the letter through a slot in the wall, and it falls into a big bag. John looks down and sees a letter addressed to Derek. He picks it up and stuffs it in his pocket. In the next scene, John arrives home, and his mom asks him to join her in baking cookies, but he's not in the mood. She tells him that the Christmas and New Year is a time for new beginnings. John adds that it's also time for new rent. He doesn't think he should be paying rent to his parents, but she argues that they're just trying to help him learn. He completely disagrees with her sentiment, but knows she's right. She states that his choices placed him where he is, and that he can't blame anyone else. John doesn't say anything more, and leaves for a walk. In the next scene, John is at a bar drinking when Derek arrives, sitting close to him. John is annoyed and confronts him, but soon calms down when Derek explains to him. Derek sold his car because he needed money, and Eugene fired John after finding out about the felony so that John could have a new start. Then Derek reveals he has a family, a wife, and a little girl, but he isn't providing. He explains that he needs the money to be able to take care of his family. At the church, John helps the pastor set up for the Christmas service. When John looks at him confusedly for putting a Christmas hat on a small statue of Jesus, the pastor explains that Santa Claus originated from Christianity. He asks why John is there, and John tells him that he took his advice, but it's not been working. The pastor then explains that he should sacrifice something he finds hard, not give something he can do without. Later on, John gets home and sits on his bed. Just then, his father comes in. He heard from Eugene that John was writing Christmas letters, just like his grandpa did. His father brings a box of his grandpa's belongings to show John, and confesses that he was scared when John was born, because he didn't know how to be a father. He relied on their grandfather, but became scared when he passed. He didn't realize that his father had his struggles too. He leaves John with a box, and assures him that his grandpa would be proud of him. John goes through the box and finds his grandpa's Santa Claus uniform. He places it on his bed and packs some things, including the gift he got for Adele, in a red bag. His mom calls him out for the Christmas Eve celebration, and he joins them in the living room. They place Alex's picture beside the small Christmas tree on the table. While his mother pours them tea, his father tells him about when he worked as a deckhand in a coast skimmer. This story reminds John of when his grandfather told them about his encounter with Santa Claus. John dresses up in his grandpa's Santa Claus uniform and heads out with the bulky red bag in his hand. He heads to the post office and steals the letters he wrote to the children. On his way out, he notices a police officer in the building, looking for who broke in. He manages to escape from the building, put the letters in his trunk, which he didn't shut properly, and drive away. He almost gets into an accident as the police chase after him, and the letters fly out of the trunk, falling on the road and getting soaked in the rain. He gets down and starts picking them up frantically. A man gets out of his car, and John asks him to help. The man wants to call the police, but John asks him not to. The sirens get closer and the man gives him the letters, telling him to run. John runs until he doesn't hear the sirens again. He sees a happy couple setting up gifts under the Christmas tree for their children. He stares at them for a while before delivering the letters to each house. He gets to Olivia's house and is about to knock when he sees her crying through the window. He stops in his tracks and just stands there. Suddenly, he hears the police sirens, and so does Olivia, who quickly stops crying. John starts running as the police chase after him. Adil sees this and thinks it's Santa Claus. John loses his hat as he continues running. He finally loses the police and stops to rest. He brings out the wet letter from Olivia to Derek and reads through it. In the letter, she apologizes to Derek and asks him to join them for Christmas, adding that a new beginning awaits them. This means that she was planning on getting back together with him. John just sits in the rain, staring at the sky, not able to do anything about what he just learned. In the next scene, John delivers the letter to Derek and turns to leave, but Derek opens the door. He's surprised that John had the letter, and John apologizes, asking him to take care of them before leaving. On his way back, John sees the police car and jumps into a ditch by the roadside. The police also jump and chase after him. He hides in the bushes and they walk past him. He looks in his box, but can't find the toy he got for Adil. The next morning, Olivia and Adil are woken by a knock on the door. Meanwhile, John wakes up and gets out of the rubble of leaves he slept in. He finally finds the Care Bear and is relieved. Just then, he gets a call from Alex. They were able to set up a satellite connection in Afghanistan for Christmas. He asks how John has been, and they talk for some time. Alex tells John to write to him before ending the call. In the next scene, John goes to Olivia's house to drop the Care Bear and the letter. He sees Derek through the window. He has also gotten a Care Bear for Adil, and they all look happy. John smiles and starts leaving. Olivia comes out of the house and sees him. She picks the teddy up and walks towards him. She comments on his rugged look, and he tells her that he's okay. She asks him about the doll, and he informs her that it was Adil's wish to Santa. It turns out that Olivia told Adil that she asked for the original Care Bear when she was younger, and never got it, so Adil asked for one for her mother. John hopes that Olivia got everything she wants, and she tells him that she did. He also hopes to get what he wants. She hugs him and smiles at him as he leaves. On his way back, John smiles and continues delivering the letters. He drives home afterward. Though he was not able to get Olivia, he has finally found a purpose for his life aside from stealing.